Hello and welcome to Talk from Superheroes. Hey everybody, I'm Andrew Ivemy.
And I'm Diana McCullough.
Oh no, the Batman is here and Diana McCullough is played by Batman. I actually had trouble kind of tracking how I would have done it there.
There's a lot of levels.
There's too many levels.
Happening.
So much
the
going
Batman
on.
is now dressed as Diana McCullough.
Oh boy.
But you don't know who the Batman truly is.
It's like an onion. You peel it back. There's
And
other
now-
masks. It's a whole Scooby-Doo thing.
And now this is the Batman as Diana McCullough
Oh, actually like hitting it.
Yeah,
Actually
he's
really nailing
figured it out. He's nailed it. His
Yeah.
Diana McCullough impression has gotten much better very quickly.
But who's 4 layers under that? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows who that is.
Nobody knows at all.
Third layer is Batman. Fourth layer?
This is Talk from Superheroes, where every week we discuss a piece of superhero television or film. This week on the podcast, we are talking about the Batman.
The titular Batman.
The Batman.
Don't mess it up.
Don't mess it up. It's the Batman.
It's a really important article, or you're going to find the wrong movie. Is the an article?
Yeah. Is it?
I said it really confidently, didn't I?
You're the editor of most of the written word we do on the site.
I don't find when I'm editing a paragraph, I need to know if the is anything.
That is true. That is true.
It hasn't come up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is fair. That is fair. There is some stuff that you don't need to
don't
know
need
to
to
write.
know.
You just don't need to know that
There's
about the
things-
English language.
That's a thing you need to know in a Jeopardy category.
Yeah.
And not a thing I need to know to actually edit a paragraph.
Don't worry about it, y'all. We're talking about the Batman this week on the podcast. And we're excited about it. It is a new property. So whenever we talk about a new TV show or movie, we are going to give you a spoiler-free review. So if you're on the fence about seeing it, not sure if it's worth your time, a little uncertain, or you just want a tease of the episode before you go watch the movie, we're going to give you a spoiler-free review up front. Then once you hear the theme music after that, that is when we get into the spoiler filled section. And as well, just to let you know what we got going on the podcast. We have the Batman obviously today. Next week, since we've never covered it on the podcast, we're going to do the other Batman origin that we haven't covered. We're going to do Batman Begins next week.
Can you believe we've never done Begins? That's going to be nice. We're going to have a nice little comparison between Begins and this movie, The Batman, as the Batman origin stories. And this week on Patreon, if you're looking for a Patreon, we're going to do some more Robert Pattinson. We're going to do Twilight.
That's right. That's going to be absolutely
We haven't watched it
bananas.
yet, but it's going to be wild.
It's going to be quite something. And that's going to be like a wonderful bleed from The Batman with Robert Pattinson to, in a couple weeks, we're going to be covering Morbius on the podcast. So
it's a double down of useful.
We're bleeding the Batman and the vampirism into one beautiful Patreon on the first Twilight film.
We haven't seen it, so that'll be a fun time.
I've never seen any Twilight.
I've never seen a Twilight.
That's going to be a fun ride. Head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/fromsuperheroes. That is this month's Patreon exclusive episode. But we're going to be talking about the Batman today. Spoiler-free review. Simple question. Diana, did you like it?
I might give it a very little bit of a like. I didn't super enjoy it. It's a weird one because I actually think it's pretty good. Like, it's a beautiful movie. It's well made. I just didn't particularly enjoy watching it. It's too long. It's very stylized and it's very slow. And I actually really like a slow pacing and like having a vibe and a feel in a movie, and it does that very well. But it is 3 hours long and it's way too long, and it never really goes anywhere for 3 whole hours, which is wild. I never really know what our next step is, what we're trying to stop, what we're trying to get ahead of. Didn't really enjoy Robert Pattinson as Batman. So there's a lot going against it. Some of it looks great. It looks really good. It's a good looking movie. If you just want to look at something for 3 hours and be like, maybe the Batman's for you, I will never watch it again, is how I will end my spoiler-free review. That's most of it for me. Andrew, how did you feel about The Batman?
I think it's great.
Oh, wow!
I think it is great.
Holy crap!
I think it's great, borderline incredible. It doesn't get to a love for me because I will say I'm obviously going to be kinder to it than you are. But one thing that you said that I very much latch onto is that this is, I think, when I watch it, I'm like, this is empirically good. It doesn't unlock the box in my heart where I keep my joy.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
in the future, if I've had a rough week and I want to watch a movie that like I really love, this isn't it, but that's just more of a personal what I like about superhero movies and these characters. I don't think it is in any way a failing of this movie. So I really like it. Most of the stuff that like I don't love is really just a matter of personal preference and taste more than anything. I think that this is, I might agree with you on Pattinson, although I'm a little bit kinder on him. I think that this is hands down the best directed Batman movie. This makes Nolan look like an amateur filmmaker who doesn't know what he's doing. Like, this is the best look, the best style, the best Gotham. This is unequivocally the best directed and visual journey through a Batman world that I've seen.
I will not argue about the direction. It looks really good. There's a clear tone. There's a clear setting being made here. There's some obvious choices that are like he's really committed to. The direction is top notch. It's
and I think they know what they're doing. Like this is a mystery movie to a high degree, and I think it lands in doing that. I think it is a kind of a challenging pace for a 3-hour movie. I don't think it's a failing pace because I do think it is intentful and they succeed in what they are trying to do. But it is a bit of a challenge of a pace for a 3-hour movie. So I can say that as a criticism. And then there'll be like a handful of goofs here and there that I have on this movie. But for the most part, I think it's great. Like I was really compelled. The mystery of it, I was super into. I was trying to solve everything Batman was trying to solve. Like I was very much engaged in the story of it.
You do love puzzles.
I love a good puzzle. I think they successfully did the Riddler in a way that is a fantastic version that I'm 100% on board with. So yeah, I was engaged. I was enthralled. I was way more into this than I thought I was going to be, and I like Patterson's Batman. I think more than you do.
I agree because I didn't really particularly like Pattinson as Batman in any way. So yeah, I guess we're going to be on different places on this one. That's going to be exciting as we step through the Batman. Mm-hmm. And then the final question is, can it be spoiled?
I think it can. Yeah.
I don't really think it can.
No?
No. I can't think of much that like I couldn't have gotten from the trailers.
Huh. You know what? It feels like it should be something that you can spoil because it's really a lot about like
who the killer is or whatever, but we know who the killer is. It's a
Riddler clues what's going on movie, but yeah, I guess there isn't really any big twist or turn involved there.
No, like we know, like unless someone's just gonna like tweet out like the answer to the riddles.
Although, no, you know what? I am gonna say actually, I'm gonna say that it can be spoiled because I think that tonally this movie does go to a couple places, and there are a few moments, and maybe this is partially due to it just being a little bit too long, where I'm like, oh, this movie's over. Oh, it's still going? So I think that is in combination.
Spoiler, it's not over.
That is partially a criticism, but it's partially because like it escalates things in ways that I didn't necessarily expect. But even then, I would say mild spoiler.
Mild spoiler. All right, so if you like the film, there's spoilers. If you didn't enjoy the film very much like me, I don't think there's any spoilers.
And even as someone who liked the film, I'm still just going to give it a very mild.
All right, well then you can go out and read all the reviews you want, all the tweets you want, pretty much.
Yeah. I honestly would say so. Yeah. I would comfortably recommend that anyone read and any review listen to this full episode. I think you'll be fine, but that's just my take on it.
I agree.
Sweet. Well, then we're in agreement that we're in a mild disagreement as to the quality of it, but an agreement on spoilers being no to mild. But let's get into the spoiler-filled details. Let's talk about everything. Let's talk about the Batman. All right, so now we can spoil the Batman. It was Diana McCollum all along. You pull your mask off, you're Batman underneath there.
There's like 5 masks.
It's so many. You're like, no air is getting through.
No air is getting through.
That's
guys.
the tough thing for you.
You don't know my identity, and also I will never get COVID. It's a double down of great things.
But also, you are struggling to breathe.
There's like a little oxygen like mask in there. One of the masks is an oxygen mask.
Okay.
I've got a tank of
and
oxygen.
like an AC unit maybe because it is
it's
hot.
Gonna be hot.
It is hot. It is hot.
Well, it's winter in Canada. I'll be fine.
Sure, that's
I'm just gonna go outside every few minutes.
strong point.
Cool myself down. I'm the killer. No, it was the Riddler. The Riddler.
It was the Riddler the whole time.
But this, obviously, from the trailers, it was the Riddler the whole time.
So we have some disparity coming into this episode
More
as to what our
disparity
opinions
than
are.
usual. I feel like this is the last time this happened was kind of Dune.
And this movie has, for me, it had strong Dune vibes.
I also thought it had strong Dune vibes.
Before we recorded today, so after we see the movie and before we record, we typically don't really talk about our opinions. We just kind of save it for the podcast. We want to have the honest and first take from one another as we go into it. But I remember just walking home from the theater and in my head being like, this is going to be a Dune. This is going to be a Dune episode that was a Dune kind of movie. It's strong visual storytelling that is maybe a little bit too long and doesn't necessarily have the character development that it needs. But I like it.
I will agree on the Dune vibes. I think I like Dune more than this movie.
Okay.
But yeah, I was also watching it and I was like, yeah, this is a Dune. Yeah, it's a little too long. It's really pretty, but like it doesn't grab me a lot of the time. And like the bigger moments that Dune had that I did like, I didn't find this movie had. But yeah, so how do we delve into this? I feel so weird when we're not on the same page. Throws me off.
Where would you like to start? Why don't you take our first foray into the world of the titular Batman?
World of the titular Batman. Well, I am actually going to not start on the titular Batman. I don't, since we're not quite on the same page, I'm going to start with a positive. Mm-hmm. My biggest positive of this movie, I actually think, is Zoe Kravitz.
Oh.
She is what I liked the most in this movie. I was very surprised. I really thought she was the only person who felt like a person. I felt like her character, I knew what her goals were. She was like, I want to save Annika and I hate my dad. I'm like, very clear goals that you are constantly striving for. I love this for you. She also was the only one who felt like she had like actual emotions and wasn't in a noir. Even though I know purposely we're in a noir, but for 3 hours you can't just be completely flat. So I thought she was great. And I really liked this interpretation of Catwoman as like, I'm not like a museum thief who like never wants to help. She's like, I steal from my dad because he's a jerk. And I'm like, oh, I like this. This is more along the gray borderline of Catwoman that I want. So I really got that their relationship and why they worked well. Yeah, she was my highlight.
And I agree with you. She has more motivation than Batman and is a strong character and I think gives a great performance. I think it is hard to top some of the physicality and whip work that Michelle Pfeiffer did.
Michelle Pfeiffer's
so that's
a totally different Catwoman.
It's a very different vibe.
She's a campy, over the top Catwoman. Yeah. She's so good. But I think in this movie, she's a great Catwoman.
Absolutely. And I like that. I like this movie's kind of modernized perspective to a certain degree, and I think it's something that we've gotten a taste of in comics and animated and other Batmans. But just how much the world gives no fuck about and actively dislikes Bruce Wayne, it feels very now, and it feels very like having Catwoman's character, having Zoe Kravitz as Selena Kyle, kind of being like, I steal money from my dad because fuck this guy, he's an asshole, and she's right. But then like kind of extending that to be like, also fuck all billionaires. Let's go rob Bruce Wayne next. Why would I defend that guy? Fuck them all. And I'm like, this is a very relatable movie for just the current world, climate, income disparity. Like it feels a very modern and aware take for a lot of what the movie does. And Catwoman is a big example of that.
She is a very that is a great point. It was one that I couldn't fully get on board on because of the world they'd built around it, but I like the idea of fuck billionaires because fuck billionaires. I just don't feel like people ever say fuck billionaires about recluse billionaires. I feel like we say that about Elon Musk because he's in the news and all the time. I feel like there's hundreds of billionaires we don't know about because they're just not in the news ever.
Yeah,
so I
that's
find
true,
it weird
but
that
still
this is like
fuck
a
them, you know?
but still fuck them. But it's weird that people are always just like Bruce Wayne. And I'm
If
like,
there are any
he hasn't-
billionaires listening to this podcast, fuck you.
Fuck you. Share your money.
Fuck
Give
you.
it away.
Yeah. Join our Patreon, you fuck.
What are you doing on the free episode?
Absolutely. Fuck you. Yeah, so I'm very much on board for that energy.
I like the energy. It felt weird to keep pointing Bruce out, especially because I got the impression he was poor now. Like, probably not a billionaire, but a millionaire.
Right. He's someone he's spending it faster than he makes it. This is not a man who balances his time or has like a Lucius Fox who's holding up things on.
He's like, I've handled your investments and you're fine.
I think he is very much a like burn it all to the ground. Like, I do not care. And I like the way that this world kind of paints, before we get into the whole Batman of it all, the Catwoman perspective on billionaires, the way this world kind of portrays the Waynes, and what the movie has to say as well. To be like, this is a version where Thomas and Martha are not good people. They're also fucking assholes. And it's like, maybe Thomas tried to do good, but has also done bad. And even when he tried to do good, all he did was unleash a ticking time bomb on the city, where he was like, what about a bunch of funds with no oversight in the most corrupt city in the world? And it was like, no, you fucking idiot. That is a terrible plan. So there is, I think, a lot of active resentment towards, you know, the wealthy that even try to do good because they want their name on a hospital or whatever it might be.
Yeah,
and I like that energy for the movie.
He was definitely trying to like buy the election, despite what he says in the speech of like, the $1 billion will go out no matter what. He was like, this is going to win it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be mayor. Who could say no to $1 billion of free help and renewal? Was it called renewal?
The Renewal Project.
The Renewal Project,
the Gotham City Renewal Project, I think.
Yeah, but like, this also brought me to a very funny scene, though, that was funny to me, but also like, I get where Bruce is coming from, where Bruce was so mad that to find out his dad like intimidated a reporter once. So I'm just like, you beat up the poor and disenfranchised personally.
Yeah.
Not even like through an intermediary. You find someone robbing a liquor store and you're like, I'm going to break every bone in your body. And it's like, you're not a good person.
Huh?
If your kids found out what you do and didn't know you were Batman, they'd be traumatized.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we can unpack more of him in a minute. But I like the movie's perspective on wealth. I like Catwoman as a character. One question that I have about Catwoman or about Selena Kyle as a character in this one is I'm not sure, and maybe it's purposefully ambiguous, or the Russian woman that she was seeing, I assume, implied relationship there.
I was very confused about the relationship with the Russian woman. Or is this the point you're getting at? Or
I'm gonna have a follow-up point, but let's expand on this.
Oh, well, just because she called her baby a lot. And I was like, oh, your girlfriend, you've called her baby. And Catwoman's bisexual in the comics. I'm like, that makes perfect sense. But she also like calls like Batman like darling and baby and honey. She uses nicknames for a lot of people. And then later she says, as referring to Annika, she's like, she's just a kid. And I'm like, I would never refer to anyone I'm dating as just a kid. This to me was the definite not dating.
So you hit part of what my follow-up point was going to be there. And I agree with you. I still think they were dating.
Okay.
Why I think she says later she's just a kid is that I think that is a false relationship and a woman she was taking advantage of to do the job. Ooh. And that is why, I forget whether it's baby or sweetie, she uses the same loving nickname for Batman before she kisses him as she does use for her girlfriend in that scene. And right after she kisses Batman, she's like, so I need you to find him for me. So she is, I think, playing a mark with a romance card. So I think she is just trying to play someone to get her closer to her goal, potentially. Or I think it's also possible it's left purposefully ambiguous, that you can see, and that is, you know, the thing about Catwoman as a character and a romantic antihero per se, is that you're always kind of unsure of their intentions. But I think that there is a parallel there that could be said, that she is playing the romance off of both of these people to get closer to her goals. Or it's possible that she is being sincerely open and vulnerable with two different romantic interests within a span of a week. And maybe that sincerity just doesn't always read.
Honestly, I feel like this is a scenario where with both characters, Annika and Batman, she was being slightly manipulative, but she's also enough of a nice person that when they're in trouble, she feels bad.
Right, which is why she's like, I don't like that they killed that kid.
Yeah.
But she was taking advantage of that kid.
But she was sincerely trying to get Annika out of town. She was
Yeah.
going to steal her passport. Like, she might have been using Annika for information about, like, where cash is and where the drugs are going through, sure. But she felt bad about it. So I think that is a nice layer of, I think she probably was using her, because she's definitely using Batman on that first kiss.
Yeah.
She's trying to manipulate him, but, like, she definitely feels something for him by the end. So yeah,
But she can do both.
there is a really nice, like, black and white to this Catwoman that I really like, where you're never like, she's untrustworthy completely. You're like, no, she's gonna like lie a little, but never to your detriment or your health.
And I think Zoe does a really good job of playing that as well, because if in an interview, Matt Reeves, the director and one of the writers of this movie, said one way or the other, like confirmed to be like, actually, our intention, and I talked about this with Zoe, was the intention was Catwoman's manipulating them, or the intention was Catwoman's sincerely vulnerable, or the intention was she's doing a bit of both. No matter what the finite answer is, it is written and performed perfectly for that. Zoe does a great job of playing all angles on this character. It's really nice.
Yeah, it could feel like ambiguous, like she hadn't made a decision, but instead it feels like her character's complex. And you're like, oh, sometimes you are just using a mark, but sometimes you do sincerely feel bad and you want to find her and save her and do what you can. And you do want to save Batman from a henchman. Yeah, it all works. She's great. She's my favorite part of the movie by far.
Should we go on to Batman?
Let's talk about the Batman.
Let's talk about the titular Batman in defense of the Batman.
In defense
now,
this feels like it's going to be in defense of Robert Pattinson and not the Batman, who I consider different things.
No, actually, I'm going to say in defense of their portrayal of the Batman. I agree with I agree with what you were kind of hinting at in the spoiler-free review. It's two-dimensional. There's no character. Catwoman is a stronger character. The villains are stronger characters. Everyone has stronger character development. This Batman is kind of nothing, and I am okay with that because I feel like we've had that before, and that works. Movies that, the first Batman movie, it has more Jack Nicholson Joker than it has Michael Keaton Batman. It is more about the villain, and there's a lot of this movie that kind of gives me a vibe and energy of Batman the Animated Series, but like the villain-centric episodes, where the Batman in this is very two-dimensional. He's a man who doesn't have a day life. He doesn't give a fuck about Bruce Wayne. The writing and Robert Pattinson are not trying to play Bruce Wayne the way that like Christian Bale played the like, I'm a drunk asshole hosting a big party, everyone look at me, and that contrasts my other personality. I kind of like the nothing character that they've made it to be like, this is an insane man who he's not brooding. He is downright suicidal. Like, he is depressed to the point of non-functionality. Like, he is not doing this because he's like, oh, maybe I can have it all or help the city. It's like, this is a man who I think wants to die and does not give a single fuck about anything and anyone and has no real character arc. And who gives a shit? Like, there's no, like, the Keaton one maybe has a, like, can I date? And I think that is just a relic of the era that there always had to be a will they, won't they romance in any popcorn movie. But I like that this character is just I'm just Batman. I've got one thing. Don't worry about anything else. And I think that works for the tone of this movie. Is it the most complex interpretation of Batman? No, but is it a functional interpretation for what this movie is doing? I think yes.
I disagree because I agree he's two-dimensional and there's not much going on, but I feel like the movie disagrees that he's two-dimensional and there's not much going on. He's like, I'm dealing with the fact that the Riddler made this kid an orphan and I'm upset that my parents were not as good as they were, but I'm still very two-dimensional about it. Like, they are still exploring who Bruce is, even if he is just mostly Batman. Like, they still are going into his personal traumas and what it means to him. And he's mad that Alfred lied to him about how maybe Marcone or maybe Falcone killed his parents. He is still dealing with these personal issues. And so either you have to take out the personal issues and he's just Batman, which I think actually does work. I like just Batman. I don't need you to go look at Rorschach tests like in Batman Forever and be like, oh, it's a bat. Maybe I like bats. But yeah, I don't feel like I feel like they explored him too much to say he's just Batman and he has nothing else going on. But the explorations were also flat because he is just Batman and he thinks there's nothing else going on. So either cut them and make them all Batman or actually like give him a couple layers to me. It didn't work at all. I did not like completely flat Batman. I also would never say that I felt this man was depressed, just because of my own way of depression and what I feel like depression feels like. I've never been depressed and been like, I'm going to work out every single night. I'm going to put a lot of work into something. Like, I'm going to leave the house every single day. No, that's not my depressed. He's something. He's driven. He's focused. He maybe does want to die, but depression doesn't feel like the right word. But there's stuff going on.
I think there's
different levels.
There's
of
a
depressed.
resignation. There's a like resign, like he is a zombie through his own life type of depression.
Zombie, I can maybe get behind.
So I see what you're saying, and obviously depression is a mysterious beast that affects us all in different ways.
It absolutely does.
And when we're talking about depression in fiction, it does. Oftentimes it doesn't look like anything like any real version of it. But I think that I have felt like similar types of depression where it is the zombie-like, I can still do an activity and go through things, but as long as everything keeps moving, I'm fine. And I think that there's a lot of people who go through that where it's just as long as there's never a moment of rest, the sadness never fully creeps in.
Okay, that I can get behind.
I keep going through because like, If at gunpoint, and granted, it would be a poor choice to put Batman at gunpoint, but if at gunpoint you're like, Bruce, you have to spend 2 days at a meditation retreat, everything would fall apart for him. Like he can't, and I think that that's the type of sadness and depression that it is. That it's like I have to just zombie-like move through my life and not even have a quiet moment under any circumstance.
I can get more behind that. It feels more like a repression than a depression, but I think that makes a lot of sense. And that is like, yes, just keep working. Don't let the emotions through. I don't feel fear. I don't feel sadness. I don't feel anything. I'm just Batman.
Yeah.
Even with that little bit of an explanation, found him very, very flat. And also these emo hair choices that were happening.
I can't defend the hair.
Thank you.
No, I can't defend the hair.
Thank God we can agree on this. And what's baffling about this emo boy hair, and not just like when he's alone in the Batcave, like when he goes to see Carmen Falcone and it's rained on him, I'm like, you're in public, sir. Please brush your hair back or get a haircut or do something. What's truly baffling about this to me is that Robert Pattinson so openly and vocally has talked about how much he hated playing Edward in Twilight because he was so emo and so fake and so pretentious. So for him to play Bruce this way is killing me. Like, how much money did they dump truck into you that you were like, oh, if Edward was Batman, yeah, no problem, absolutely. Give me some.
I've got that.
Give me some dark.
My
hair's even blacker.
I'm back in.
Can I sparkle? Give me the glitter. I will go into the sunlight. I will take all the money. I will be the Batman of Twilight. Yeah, bafflingly awful hair.
I cannot defend the hair.
Oh.
I think that there is. So I agree with a lot of what you just said about the portrayal of Batman. It sways me a little bit towards the dislike of this version of Batman. I agree with you. The parent thing doesn't necessarily go anywhere. The like quietly feeling sad for another orphan child, I'm like, that's a fine amount of development or whatever. The mad at Alfred stuff doesn't really do anything for me. So I see what you're saying, that there are attempts.
Every time he's Bruce, it's very boring. Every time he's in the Batman outfit, it absolutely works.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it feels like they just, I don't know why those parts are in there, because he doesn't really react or respond to them as a character.
Yeah. Doesn't make any sense. So, right. And also, like, it's 3 hours. Cut those out. Just let him be Batman.
The movie can be cut down, for sure. I really liked it, but it can still be cut down.
Excellent.
I think it can still, I actually like this movie enough that I think it can be cut down and still be an obnoxious length, and I would still like it. Like, at 2.5 hours, I'd be like, that's obnoxious. And then I would have seen this movie and been like, fuck, that might be worth 2.5 hours. It ain't worth 3. They didn't do it for 3. There was some stuff that could have been chopped and edited.
I can believe in 2.5 hours. I could get behind that. I think I'd like this movie a lot more at 2.5 hours. There's just absolutely no way a Batman movie needs to be longer than Endgame. Like, Endgame is the longest a movie can be because it's 32 movies wrapping up.
Yeah.
The Batman is one movie just getting started.
Well, what I felt watching this movie is it felt like it should have been a miniseries. Like
It did feel like watching a whole season of a show.
And that was why it both felt like it overstayed its welcome and didn't at the same time, because there was even a serialized storytelling. Like I was trying to kind of figure out the act structure of this movie as I was watching it, and I couldn't quite figure out where the act breaks were. Like our usual movies typically are 3 acts, just broken up into 3 sections where it's like there's the act 1, the setup, there's a call to action or adventure, act 2, a series of circumstances leading to a hopeless dark night of the soul, act 3, resolution. I couldn't quite figure out where it was here because I feel like it actually might have been 4 television episodes of different mini arcs. So even like solving each individual riddle felt like a week's episode of a TV show, and it just kind of hard stops and then starts a new 3-act structure. It was a very strange structure that works and doesn't simultaneously.
I absolutely agree. I also felt like I was watching a season of a show, a very short season, but like you can feel the breaks, you can feel the lulls. Like 1 kill an episode by the Riddler is a cool Batman show.
Yeah.
Like a 4-episode Batman show where the Riddler kills someone every episode, but Catwoman's got some stuff going on and there's a mayoral election. And I'm like, oh, that's a great show. It's a great Batman show. It's too much for a movie, but yeah, it definitely doesn't have a 3-act structure.
And especially
because there's
for
no especially Dark Night of the Soul. I can't tell when things got the bleakest because it feels like the bleakest would be right before all the seawalls blow up. But he's caught the Riddler at that point. So it's hard to be like, I've caught the bad guy. He won't kill again. But I'm at my darkest point.
That's the darkest point for the city, but not our main character.
Yeah.
So it's a very strange thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, each individual crime, characters coming and going, like Falcone not showing up until a bit later. It's a strange arc. Yeah, I think it is episode 1, the murder of the mayoral candidate. Mm-hmm. Episode 2 is the murder of the police chief. Episode 3 is the murder of the DA, and like each one has its own, and it's like, oh, this episode has Penguin in it, and like Penguin is just there for 2 episodes, but not for the full arc of the thing. A very episodic structure, which is strange for a movie. I kind of vibe with it, but only kind of.
I get that. It's at least you can recognize that the structure kind of worked somewhere. It's not like you're like, this person can't write scripts. Like, right. This person wrote a show, and they can write a show, but, like, it's not quite a movie.
And there are ebbs and flows and ups and downs, but it's not quite in the right places that you would think it should be, or it has the arc of, like, a good video game where you've taken some side quests, and, like, that breaks up the main story a bit, and maybe you like the side quests better, but, like, it's good writing, but it's just a slightly non-traditional format for what they're doing, right?
I can get behind that.
Well, let's take a short break in the podcast to thank our sponsor of today's episode. We want to thank our wonderful friends over at Raycon.
Raycon, their wireless earbuds are the best way to bring audio with you. And like you're listening to audio right now. Mm-hmm. You could be listening on these wonderful, wonderful Raycons.
If you're listening to this audio right now with whatever free pair of trash came with some piece of electronics you purchased at some point, don't do that. Don't do that. First of all, that is incredibly uncomfortable on your ears. I don't know how people use just the bare bones generic stuff. I'm like, first of all, my ears are throbbing with pain. But with Raycons, super comfortable. Don't fall out. I'm loving every minute of it.
I can't tell you enough how much my old earbuds fell out all the time. I couldn't even wear them working out. I had to wear over the ear headphones when I worked out, which is not what you want to do when you work out. All sweaty and gross, not ideal. All sweaty and gross. You're too hot. Your ears are covered up. So I've been wearing my Raycon everyday earbuds to work out. They will not fall out. It's amazing. Andrew even walked in on me as I put them in for the first time, and I was like jumping up and down and twisting my head. You're like, what's going on? I'm like, I'm seeing if they're going to fall out. And they didn't budge.
For a workout, it's like burpees or like shadow boxing are the two where it's like your average earbud's going to give up. Even if they have kind of a hold, a burpee, it's like that's every damn direction. You're going the up, the down, the jarring, the hit the ground hard. Earbuds want to go flying, and the Raycons don't, which is fantastic. I also like that they have an awareness mode for when you need to listen to your surroundings, and I think that that's actually really nice because a lot of the times going around the city, I want to have a little bit of an awareness of my surroundings. I like this feature in a headphone also because I cycle a lot as well. And I want to have like some music while I'm cycling, but I also don't want to be completely oblivious to what's going on because that is a very dangerous thing to do if you're on a bicycle.
Hot take from Andrew, he doesn't like being hit by cars.
I like safety, but I do like being able to listen to music or podcasts.
And you can do that with your Raycons. They also offer 8 hours of playtime and a 32-hour battery life. Your little case will hold 32 hours, and you get 8 hours off your headphones. It's wonderful. I haven't run out of power anywhere close.
So right now, our listeners can get 15% off their Raycon order at buyraycon.com/TFS. That's buyraycon, BUYRAYCON.com/TFS to save 15% on Raycons. Buyraycon.com/TFS. And thank you, Raycon, for your support.
Thank you so much, Raycon, for your support and your earbuds.
And now, back to the Batman.
The Batman. How do you feel? I feel like I'm going to know the answer because you like this movie a lot. How do you feel about Batman being at just absolutely full crime scenes in complete costume? This seemed ridiculous to me.
Don't mind it. Don't mind it. Yeah.
There's so many people at these crime scenes, though. Like, I can get behind, like, a kind of, I think animated series did this the most, where Gordon would be like, everyone get out of here for, like, 5 minutes, and Batman would come in through a window and do everything he needed to do.
Sure.
Batman walking up several flights of stairs down a hallway with, like, 30 cops there is ridiculous. He is a masked, undeputized officer of the law. Yep. And this movie is so grounded that it makes it sillier than usual.
That's what I love about it.
Oh, fuck you!
That's what I love about it.
It's so silly, but they don't act like it's silly. I hate it.
I think they act like it's a little silly. Like the fact that at one point someone's like, chain of evidence sheath? And it's like, he's wearing gloves.
He does have gloves on.
I think
we don't know who he is.
They have some, but not a lot of fun with it. But I agree with you. It's ridiculous. Batman is inherently insane, if you think about it for even a second.
I've thought about it.
And I like that this movie, for the most part, exists in a uncomfortably real place.
It is a very real movie, yeah.
But, like, real in the sense that a lot of the times, like, when, like, a superhero movie or any movie is like, we're real and gritty, it's like, no, you're, like, hyper violent in a way that the real world is not. Like, you've gone so far in... When a lot of movies say that, like, we're real, it becomes a caricature of reality. This movie is real in the sense that a uncomfortable, wet Batman walks up a 3-story walk-up flight of stairs to look at a crime scene. And it's like, that is not at all glamorous or fun. And despite the fact that this movie does look gorgeous, it looks absolutely beautiful. It is one of the most flawlessly shot things I could possibly visualize. But it's not it's not gorgeous in a, like, glamorizing cool way. It's just a wet, shitty, uncomfortable Batman looking at a crime scene. And I kind of dig the awkward reality that this lives in, where it's slightly heightened, but also it's kind of like, this sucks.
I don't mind the awkward reality. I actually really love the groundedness. I'm not going to lie. I think it's very interesting to watch Batman, like, I really like that the thing he has to do is, like, he just has to, like, wear a hoodie over his costume and have a backpack with him is very interesting to me, of, like, oh, that is how he would have to, like, he breaks into the bar, the Iceberg Lounge, and then he just goes into a hallway and he changes real quick. But
yeah, he's Spider-Manning.
But yeah, not in the cool, like, it's all in a briefcase like Bruce Wayne way normally. Just like, no, I have a motorcycle helmet on and I'm only barely hiding this.
This is awkward and shitty.
Yeah, awkward and shitty. It is literally just the fact that there's so many cops at the crime scene, and also at, like, news conferences. He's going to fucking news conferences. This is Batman 66 level silly things happening in an otherwise completely grounded universe, and they do not lean into the fact that that's hilarious, and it bothers me.
It could be funnier. You're right. When he walks out and there are cameras at a press conference and he's just looking at a sad child, that is a bit much.
He has handcuffed Carmen Falcone, is handing him over to the cops, and the news is there, and no one is like, is that Batman?
And the fact that, like, when we see the Riddler's crazy room where he's got, like, you know, newspaper clippings and stuff, and one of the newspapers is like, who is the Batman? And it's a grainy photo. And I'm like, where did you even get a grainy photo? That man was at a fucking press conference
He's
today.
around.
You get some clear as day photos of Batman.
Which is so great because until the very end of this movie, this Batman's whole thing is like, they think I could be in any shadow, but I am the shadows. They think I'm not human. I also go to press conferences. It's so fucking dumb. I like describing
he's a dumb idiot.
I like describing. He is dumb. He's very good at puzzles. He's dumb.
Yeah, but like just conceptually, Batman's a big dumb idiot, and this is such a fun interpretation of that.
Other grounded stuff I like is I like that he hardly uses any like overly cool gadgets. Like he's got like a taser in his wrist or whatever. Sure. And he has grappling hooks, but he uses them in the most realistic way I've ever seen grappling hooks used. Like he's not, when he gets to the roof of the police building and he gets to the edge, you can tell he's never jumped off a building before. Cause like, why would I be on the roof of a building? I take the stairs.
Yeah.
Like there is no reason to go onto the roof of buildings. It doesn't make any sense.
No,
this guy not knowing how he's going to get off the roof of this building immediately, I was like, that's refreshing.
Grappling hooks are not infinite. Like you grapple it once and that's stuck there. It doesn't retract every time. Like you don't have.
Also, do you know how much grappling hook you would need on your belt to get down a 27-story building?
Huge. It's way too much.
More than your body.
See, I would say actually one of my big negative seeds is I did not like. It was too dumpy awkward, and it existed in the silly place that I don't think it should exist in, was the flight suit. So when he gets awkwardly to the roof of the police precinct, then it's like, my cape inflates into a squirrel's gliding suit or whatever, and it's like, I actually didn't even really notice that this was a Batman who hadn't glided or grappled from rooftop to rooftop in a traditional, like, cool, glamorous Batman sense. So we could have just not had this. At no point was I like, why doesn't he fly everywhere? I didn't need to be like, oh, the suit's one use. The cape is one use. It ejects. It's inflatable, and it fucking sucks. It was just kind of a dumb, dumpy scene, but not in a fun way. I didn't really like that one.
I didn't like how much suit there was. Like, he inflated it, and suddenly his entire outfit was a flight suit, which I was like, it wasn't.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have minded if just the cape did it.
Right.
Because it did seem like too much, but I definitely wouldn't get rid of it because it was the only like high-end action piece for quite a while. The other like big action, like big exciting, because they also like he hits a truck and he gets fucking wrecked, and I love that. I love a Batman that gets wrecked.
I do love a Batman that gets wrecked. I think that this movie did exist in a weird place, kind of in between a Batman Year One and Batman. Like, he's awkward and sloppy.
I mean, it's Batman Year 2. It said it right in the journal.
Oh, did it say it in the journal?
Yeah, as he was journaling, it said Batman, it literally in writing said Batman Year 2.
Fuck, I don't mind that. That's all right. Yeah. Okay. All right.
So he's not just starting. To me, it felt more like I'm Matt Reeves, and I want to do a very grounded Batman. And also the toy company's here, and they told me I had to do a couple things, and I had to Batman and Robin a scene, and so he's got a flight suit. I'm so sorry.
Gotcha.
There's going to be a toy where he has a flight suit.
I can maybe see that. Yeah. Yeah.
Because, it doesn't quite fit. Like, it just magically appearing doesn't fit anything else this Batman
and with
has
no
done.
exposition around it or anything like that. And not that we need that. I kind of like that this Batman's just like, I've got a car and some gadgets. Fuck off. Like, we don't need a whole story or a thing about how he gets it. And I'm kind of cool with that.
Mm-hmm. And the other final grounded thing I will say I like about this Batman is it took me like 3 things for me to like it. This happened 3 times where I was like, oh, I get it now. He is kind of like, I do like this idea of what is the word I want? He's like a Lone Ranger in a Western. Like, he always makes a spur sound when he walks into a scene.
I was going to mention the spurs, yeah.
It's kind of cool. I actually normally I like a hide in the shadows, completely stealthy Batman, but there is something cool about like, I'm going to let you know I'm coming.
I think that is very cool and intimidating. And I think that is another one that exists in the fun level of awkward reality, where it's like, this is a a fighter wearing a bunch of heavy gear.
It can't be quiet.
It's about 250 pounds of man wearing nothing but leather and rubber on a rainy day. It's gonna be loud as it comes at you, and there's no reason for it to have that sound of spurs. But it really does add something to his character when you hear that heavy thud and that little spur sound. I like it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was probably my final favorite thing about this Batman. And then other than that, I was like kind of lukewarm on this Batman.
I like the casual Batmobile. I like the casual motorcycle kind of vibes that he has going on. I like that as well. I think the other thing that exists in the right level of awkward reality in this movie that I really enjoy is I really like the Riddler. I think that this character fucking works in every level and is maybe an almost uncomfortable interpretation of how a career villain gets hench people. Like that turn of like the Riddler being someone who is just an absolute extremist on like dark web forums with a handful of followers, and they're exchanging explosives recipes and like the messages on the side about like, here's the best army surplus store where we can buy matching stuff. Coordinating with other extremists and you just being the mastermind and best one of them is a great kind of modern, awkwardly grounded interpretation of a supervillain that it made me uncomfortable, but I really liked.
No, I will agree with you. That was pretty much the only interpretation of a supervillain getting henchmen that I absolutely 100% believed. I was like, and you're right, that was an awkward, grounded moment, but it's only awkward because we don't want to face how realistic that is. Like,
yeah.
It's not awkward like Batman at a press conference awkward. It's awkward like, oh no, that would work. Yeah, that would be how you would get henchmen who will kill people for you. Absolutely. They will rile each other up while you're busy. They will talk amongst themselves in the chat room. You just have to lead this crew. It was upsetting. I wouldn't have minded if that came up a little sooner because I will say I didn't like this finale of the Riddler's been captured and Batman's big fight is a bunch of henchmen and the Riddler's not there. That was kind of just didn't mean anything to me. I'm like, what are they even trying to do? Are they going to shoot random people? Are they going to shoot the mayor? I wasn't sure what their goals were. I knew they had guns and that's bad.
Yeah.
I wish that had been like introduced sooner of like they're doing more kills or whatever. But overall also, this is a really cool Riddler. He's like if Saw was classy.
He is a classy Saw.
He's a classy, like, really well-directed Saw. It's not campy.
Yeah.
Really, like, hardcore serial killer Saw.
Saw if he was good at, like, group projects. Saw with leadership abilities. Yeah.
Yeah, Saw when he's, like, not... Saw when the lesson is you die no matter what, which I think is, like, Saw 3. Spoilers for one of the Saws.
Right.
I don't remember which one. But, yeah, the kills were... the kills were actually probably my favorite part of the movie. They were
really upsetting. Very very Saw, very Seven, very like, holy shit, this is an upsetting serial killer. Yeah. Yeah,
the very first one where like the mayor is watching the news and he's behind him and just this movie does a lot with like flashes of light illuminating scenes. Like the muzzle flashes in the fight later, and this one had the news illuminating the Riddler like hiding behind him, but not hiding, just standing there. Yeah. The kills were all super cool and upsetting. I'm not sure what the rats did to the commissioner, but that's fine. I'm sure it was something.
Yeah, I think they either ate his face or went in through his mouth.
Well,
because like they had prototype versions of the traps in the Riddler's house, but like version 1.0, like they weren't like the finalized version. So when they go through Riddler's house at the end, it's like, here's the first pass at what the next one was. And it's like a bunch of different cell phones taken apart because he was trying to figure out which cell phone worked best for the detonator. And the message for him is like, asking like, here, what are the best ways to do a detonator and stuff like that. So like there's all these prototypes around, and in the house I do think they have one where it's like it is a glass box or plastic box with the rats in it, and then like a maze, and then the tube goes into the mouth. So it's like the rats are going to get hungry, and once they find out, they eat you.
Yeah, that just feels like it would take a really long time.
And I think that's meant to be the horror of it. I think they actually might have realized that they went too far with that one, and I think they've cut some scenes from the movie because I think at some point they were like, this is actually really fucking upsetting.
Well, Gordon has a line that says he was killed by arsenic, though. there was a needle in his neck and he was killed by arsenic, and Batman's like, rat poison.
Ooh.
So I don't know what the rats were for. I get you. I maybe agree that like they were like, ooh, we can't say he got eaten by rats while alive.
Add in a line where Jim says rat poison.
Rat poison, because there were rats, and I guess when the rats eventually ate him, they also died because he was full of rat poison.
Yeah. Okay. And he was dead, so it.
But he definitely got injected with rat poison and was killed that way.
Okay.
So I don't know if the rats were just aesthetic.
I don't know. I don't know what is up with that. And like, I kind of like the like press conference video calls that he is doing and how it's like poorly framed and shit like that.
It's creepy. It's cool. I was also the whole time I was like, man, how do you get your glasses to not fog up in a mask? Because I've been trying for like 2 years.
I think they're just so far forward, you know? And also like his mask, his nose and mouth are exposed. Like it has holes over the mouth.
He's not trying to do what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, they're very different purposes, you know?
Yeah, very, very creepy. Very cool.
And I think that like that community idea of like he has this dark web of extremists who are as mad and insane as he is sharing knowledge is also, I think, like part of the brilliance of the writing, where it always feels like too much when any one character, and even Batman to a certain degree, but it's scaled back. Batman isn't, you know, the end all in this world. When one character knows every possible trade and skill set, but there is something about the Riddler just being like a great planner, like a crazy person who is willing to go the distance, but is also just like, what are good detonators? And having to like go on a chat room, it's scary how kind of real that is about a terrorist, about a serial killer.
It's one of those ones where you're like, this might be too good advice for bad guys on how they can do this. Because it's, very grounded in that, very grounded in the Riddler, just full on admitting he's like, I can't really kill people with my bare hands. I'm very non-physically intimidating. Like, I haven't learned that skill. It's kind of like a thing that annoys me when Batman fights the Joker a lot. And the Joker's usually, like, as good as him for some reason. I'm like, when did you go to learn all the martial arts? The Joker?
Yeah.
I hate this. Or, like, Riddler can fight with a cane really well. And I'm like, no, you can't. So I do like this grounded Riddler of, like, I'm really smart. I've got a good online following. And I can't physically fight anyone. Although you gotta laugh when like that one cop is just like, whoa, 500 followers.
We both
how many
laughed.
followers do you have, cop?
We both laughed because that was funny, but it was 500 followers once they revealed it was 500 followers on a dark web murder forum. That is a lot of followers.
That is. Although
like,
I think
for
you have to.
us running a podcast, webcomic, and online network, 500 followers is not enough. Serial killers, you want to keep that follower count to 0, and 500 is alarmingly high. So that's not good there.
It's not
But
good
it does
there.
sound funny in the moment.
It sounds funny in the moment when this guy's got, because like they've been talking about how he's like going on like actual news and like live streaming on like the not dark web, just the web. So he's like 500 followers. I'm like, he's been on the news for a week.
Right.
He should have way more followers.
One thing that did bother me about his plan, his whole thing of like Batman's gonna do it, and granted he's crazy, so maybe I'm thinking too much into a crazy person, but he's got that room with a gun with the sniper rifle planted at the door of Falcone's hangout, and it's like, once Batman brings him out into the light, I'm gonna shoot him, but I can't go in there and fight. I need someone to go in and bring him out into the light. But they never have a thing about like a line about Falcone being like reclusive or not coming out very often. In fact, one of several of the scenes with Falcone is him playing pool in front of an open window above the door. So granted, this might be the Riddler being like, I get joy in taking advantage of Batman, and I want the press and the people to see. But when he's like, I needed you to get him out, how else would I take the shot? Be like, I don't know, maybe the window 1 foot higher that he seems to be in front of all of the time.
And also, he leaves. He went to the mayor's funeral.
Right.
Which you were also at. You sent the DA in the car.
Could have took a shot there.
So the mayor's funeral can't be so important that it's like the only time he's left in like a year. Like, you could just wait that guy out. Unless he like always is like, turn off the lamppost, I'm coming out, and it's gonna be dark.
no one can take a shot because it is too dark.
The lamppost has to be on, Batman. Someone keeps turning off that goddamn lamppost. My only thought.
Okay, all right. Well, now it all makes sense.
My question about Riddler's plan, genuine, actual question. This will turn into a goof for sure, but actual, genuine question. If your city has a seawall, should it be like 20 feet below sea level in the main city? This seemed wild to me. Like, I think a seawall is for like when there's a hurricane, which they even mention.
Yeah.
They're like, the seawall is for when there's a hurricane. And I'm like, so when did the city get built that you could put a seawall up? If you immediately floods with no seawall.
You built a recessed city. Like
like it's sunk like Vienna.
Yeah.
Because like, we're not talking like a little bit of water. The roof of that stadium was almost at the sea level. So they built Gotham literally into the ground.
It's below sea level.
This is waiting to become Atlantis.
Yeah.
The amount of water was wild.
It was way too much. I'm not a city planner. I've always said it. I don't know the logistics of this, but that can't be right.
That can't be
right.
That
can't be right.
I know global warming has raised the sea level, not 20 feet though.
Right.
It has not raised it so much that you need to, like, if you blow up a seawall on a peaceful, calm day, your entire New York-sized city is fucking gone.
Like,
just toast.
The only experience I can think of having with a seawall is I've been in Vancouver, and I've looked at the Vancouver seawall, and I've never thought, if that thing goes where Vancouver is fucking... I've never looked at it and been like, if that goes, I'm running to whatever stadium the Canucks play at, and that is going to be where I set up shop, and that will also mostly be underwater.
Yeah, so this was baffling to me.
Especially when they show like the map and it around the edges of the city, I was kind of like, oh shit, we're doing No Man's Land like already?
Also thought they were doing No Man's Land. I'm like, oh, that's why this movie's 3 hours. We're gonna blow up all the bridges. You're gonna fully No Man's Land this thing, I guess. But instead, you made a new thing where everything got
wet.
Wet
Man's Land. You did Wet Man's Land. Oops, too wet.
Get your wetsuits on. We're all gonna die. And it also was just
the contrivance of when Catwoman was trying to leave town on her motorcycle and just a random cop stops her and she's like, why can't I leave town? And it's just a random cop with like a New York accent who's just like, we got a bunch of water coming in. You can't just leave town. It's like, why can't she? I don't understand why she couldn't go in that direction.
And not even a single joke about how cats don't like water.
Oh, you're right. Not one there.
Not a single joke.
Not a single one. Yeah, why things wet was a weird flex.
It was a weird flex, and I didn't really like it because it caused too many deaths that Batman couldn't stop. Like, that's like, because like the water can't leave the city. If a storm didn't cause the overflow of water, Gotham's just underwater forever now. That's how water levels work, as far as I understand them. Like, if a storm didn't surge it all in, then nothing's gonna surge it all out. So Gotham's just gone. So and thousands have died.
Especially when the movie ends with Gotham is flooded, but the federal government will be here tomorrow and FEMA's going to take care of it. I'm like, oh yeah,
no problem.
100% fixed. We're good now, buddy. Oh sure, that'll do her. That'll do. They'll put a little bit of they'll put some duct tape on it. You'll be fucking set.
We're gonna bring some buckets. We're gonna get that water. Some shop vacs.
Oh yeah, You're going to be get some flex tape. You know that meme of the guy who's slapping flex tape on that bucket of water?
We can put that on the seawall.
Just put that on the seawall and you're going to be all set there, buddy.
You're going to be good. And I do love when movies like just get the timeline of disasters wrong. Just like the idea that this mayor is holding a press conference and people are still like injured behind her. Like nothing has been saved yet. We are still in the midst of this catastrophe.
Oh yeah.
And she's having a full press conference. I'm like, no, you gotta get out of here.
Well, I think that...
But like every movie does this.
Yes, it's just a constant... it's anytime there is a disaster of some sort. I think that there is, to get back to a couple positives of the movie, I think that there is some things, even though I don't love the flooding, it's just kind of like forced and sudden, and it is shocking. That was one of the mild spoilers that I was kind of referencing off the top, is that I did not expect the whole city to be flooded, to have like one final showdown with a bunch of believable henchmen who at this point are just terrorist followers of the Riddler. And it's the only time I've actually believed followers of a supervillain, you know, when in any other version, or even like, you know, Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, where it's just like, we saw a dude in clown makeup shoot Johnny Carson. Now we're all clowns. I'm like, what are we doing?
Like, but two guys would do that.
But in this one, I'm like, okay, this has been years of neglect, poor governance, creating an extreme faction. This actually really checks out why you have followers. So I bought into that. The flood thing, I feel like it kind of could have played into a little bit of this story of like things that are outside of his control and maybe pushing Batman to the extreme. Like, there are some really good observations about Batman in this movie. I think that scene where Falcone is talking to Bruce, and Falcone says to him about like why he killed that reporter for Bruce's dad. And he's like, your dad wanted me to strike the fear of God in him, but when fear doesn't work, what else do you end up doing? And it was just a matter-of-fact statement to a man who's like opening VO was like, my whole thing's about fear. And so just this idea of like, you're going to kill. Like someday, like you prey on fear right now, and someday that's not going to work, and you're going to cross that line. And I think that was a very pointed observation about Batman as a character said to Bruce Wayne. And I think there is a lot of that in this movie of criminals or anti-heroes like Catwoman being like, you're not better than me. Like, you are just me a week ago. Like, you're not any way better than me.
I think there is that. The Falcone one didn't do too much for me. I think the biggest one to me was the one that the movie framed as the biggest one, when the henchman says, I am vengeance. And Batman has to look at him and be like, shit, we are the same. I have perpetuated a cycle of violence within this city. That's why nothing is getting better. I create violent things. These people create violent things. It's just going in a circle. We really aren't that different, which is a weird thing to get from just a random henchman. Mm-hmm. But that one got me more of like Batman realizing things about himself.
And that henchman was the guy who was spouting extreme things at the funeral.
Oh, that's who that was.
That's why they had the close-up of it.
Okay. He didn't. Yeah. His face was all messed up, and also he didn't have that long a close-up, but okay, that makes sense. Thank you. I was wondering. I was like, you look familiar.
And I feel like there might be it did take me a second. Like, it wasn't the clearest it could be, and the lighting wasn't quite perfect. And I think that there is something to be said in this movie about that, where it's like the villains are people who Batman didn't perceive as the villain. It is people with extreme political beliefs who are just ignored until they're a problem, and no one tries to help them. Like, Batman literally like hears that man spout his manifesto at that funeral, and it's just like, well, that's not something I have to deal with right now.
No, I'm here for the Riddler.
Yeah, I'm someone who deals with things after they've occurred, not before.
Yeah, he is not a preventative Bruce Wayne or Batman. No, that's his biggest character flaw in this, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I will say I'm going to get into a big positive, and then I'll have a little negative for it at the end.
Please.
But my big positive, we've talked about how it's like a beautiful movie. I would like to get into some specific shots. Like, there are some really, really gorgeous ones. I think we already talked very briefly, muzzle flash fight scene.
So well done.
So cool to have like the power turned off and just be like watching this entire fight scene lit by muzzle flashes. Incredible idea. Extremely well executed. It looks awesome.
Extremely well executed to the point where I'm like, I don't even know how you actually technically executed that.
Did you film this in black? Did you film it with the muzzle flashes? Did you film it lit and make it dark sometimes?
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it was filmed semi-lit. They brought the saturation completely down to darkness, then added in digital muzzle flashes that kind of reset the coloring to what it originally was. But either way, just technically, and also the choreography is really intimidating and scary. Great scene.
Absolutely great. And then the other really beautiful one, although some of it doesn't work for me, it's beautiful, the chase with the penguin. Shots of it are beautiful, like shots from like the side of the car and the flip over when penguin's flipped over is absolutely gorgeous. The geography was very bad, though. I couldn't tell which cars were where. There was too much rain. It was too gloomy. It definitely was not a traditional chase scene. in a way that maybe he was doing on purpose, but I couldn't even tell who was winning.
Right.
Who's winning this chase scene? What are our goals also? But yeah, the shot, holy shit, the shot when Penguin's cars flipped over is incredible.
I agree with you. The geography of it wasn't as clear. There were no open wides. The goal of where you're going, how you're getting away wasn't super purposeful. But I think that was a scene that was more about style. And yeah, the camera angles of choosing it to be like the camera on the driver's side, of catching the driver and what's going on behind them was a new kind of a feel to a chase scene. And some of the mirrored shots as well, and purposefully being out of focus for certain things. Very stunning. Very stunning.
Ooh, out of focus was one of Riddler's kills when the car was steamed up while he was killing the DA.
Yeah.
Or putting the collar on the DA.
Yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous. I will say my complaint about the Penguin chase scene isn't just that there was no geography. I really wish that scene was more motivated. I didn't give a shit about that chase scene as good as it looked. Because, I guess the idea was just we had to catch the Penguin, but we know where the Penguin is literally all the time. He's at the Iceberg Lounge. We visited him 4 times there. So I'm like, did you just cause 18 car wrecks and kill a bunch of people to catch a guy who you know where he works?
And you've fought your way into his lair before,
easily?
And it was semi-inconvenient, but it was way easier than destroying a gasoline truck blew up on a back-to-back traffic day.
Batman, you've killed people. I mean, Penguin
bad.
did that, but you're the one, you're instigating this chase. You know where Penguin lives and works. You fought 2 twins to get to him last time. I really needed more of a reason for this chase to be happening to this extent and this large.
And I don't think they really highlight or lean into or want to reference in that chase scene to be like, it's psychopathic that so many people in the background died during this. But I think that this is a Batman who does not attempt to save people first. He is attempting to catch someone for justice first. And if people get hurt along the way, as long as he didn't actively cause that, that's fine. And the only person he actively saves is the person that he is the child who almost gets hit by the car at the funeral scene, who he perceives as himself. But literally everyone else at that funeral scene, he's like, it's your job to get out of a way of a moving car. And he's not wrong. It's all of our jobs to try to preserve our own life to a certain degree. But he is not a hero in the saving life sense. He is a hero in he is vengeance. He is only vengeance. And
he's not like vengeance and aftercare.
Yeah.
He's not vengeance and I have a medical kit ready to go.
Yeah, he's not, I would rather not vengeance if no one gets hurt today. It is just, I'm only vengeance. And that's the only 2 dimensions that this character has, with the exception of saving that one kid. But I do still think that that's more destruction than they would have liked, or that makes sense for that scene.
Yeah.
But it looks
it looked
gorgeous.
Good. Babe, I'm not saying it didn't look incredible. Pretty much all of this movie looked incredible. The very stylized, looking through the lenses as Selina's at the club. I actually really like that whole sequence. I like that as them bonding and also doing detective work. I think that whole sequence was really great. There's tons of stylized stuff. You can't even list it all. But yeah, it is a gorgeous movie.
And even just in terms of the era that this exists in, I think they do a really good job of blending new and old and having this modern retro aesthetic. So things like that eyepiece, so that little contact that Selina wears that contacts back and forth with Bruce, with Batman at the Batcave. It's that is some highly advanced Mission Impossible type shit. But it's not glamorous or cool. It is a low-res circular image that he gets on an old tube TV that he has to manually tune in. And it is this marriage of old and new tech. And then there's still one flat screen behind him playing the news, but it's not a wall of TV monitors because you're not getting anything extra out of having the news on 40 TVs versus 1. So it's this modern but simplistic interpretation. There's one flat screen TV with the news and a weird tube TV with a shitty circular pixelated image from an iris camera. Then he finds what he likes and he prints it out so he can manually write on it. It's not transferred to a tablet sponsored by Microsoft Surface that he air flicks over to a thing.
There is nothing sponsored in this movie, huh?
There's no sponsored tech. He prints out things to make jot notes on them, even though it was captured on an iris camera.
I mean, the printing out of things totally made sense to me because he's trying to solve a puzzle. I'm like, you can't solve a puzzle on a tablet. Pen and paper for like a if it's a tablet-based puzzle, of course. But just a puzzle you're trying to solve, pen and paper, baby.
No.
Yeah, even Alfred pen and papered it.
Alfred pen and papered it. No voice activation. No like.
Ooh, no.
No like
nothing.
back computer. Analyze the cryptic and cross-reference with. There was no like back computer call Alfred. It is just a like.
I mean, even the phone he calls at the house is like not quite a rotary, but it's got those big old buttons.
It's an old landline.
Yeah, old landline. Alfred doesn't have a cell phone.
Right.
Alfred's old school.
So there's a nice marriage there where like they even show at one point one cop watching the news on his cell phone, but that felt very natural. And whenever like things are shared, it's so funny how like some movies when things are shared online, they'll be like, it's trending worldwide immediately. It's like, what does that mean? Did people sense that there was news happening?
No, it takes like an hour.
Yeah, so like, when shit like, of course the USB drive contained a virus, Gordon. And then it emailed out the thing. And when he was just like, it went to all the newspapers. I'm going to catch hell for this tomorrow. Whereas I feel like a lot of modern writing from older people who don't understand the internet would write that scene where it's like, it emailed out. Oh my God, it's trending everywhere. Even though that's meaningless and there's no real reason. No. But for Gordon to be like, I'm going to be in trouble tomorrow, to be like, it takes at least 24 hours for the news cycle to get a hold of this.
Yeah, the person you just sent it to has to read it, has to take it all in. I feel like Batman could even just like take your computer real quick and be like, you know how you can unsend an email if it hasn't been opened yet? I feel like Batman could be like, give me your laptop. I'm going to show you a little trick.
He has no computer programs. He doesn't even... Gordon uses the computer, and he's just watching it, just being like...
Batman's just like this thumb is a thumb drive.
Fuck, computer, huh?
It was a cool little... It was a trick.
It was a trick. It was a thumb.
It was a word pun.
It was a thumb
drive. Try it like that. Oh, right, viruses. I'm glad we used your laptop.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of my last things, I'm winding down on my Batman. One of my last things is, unfortunately, also a negative. Feel like the relationship with Alfred was kind of nothing as well. And didn't go anywhere. Although I already touched on briefly that like nothing with Bruce really worked. Mostly, I just want to really rag on Bruce for being very mean to Alfred the second he woke up from being blown up. It was really rude. Like, Alfred gets blown up. It was a bomb meant for you. And he's like, literally just opened his eyes for the first time. And you went, you lied to me. Like, you gotta give him a minute.
Yes, he is very rude right away. It is a bit much.
It's a bit much because, hear me out, I don't want to talk about anything when I wake up from regular sleep. If I've woken up from being blown up by a bomb, I don't need this emotional kind of tearing into my soul about my dead employer and his son business.
It's quite a bit. And he's on painkillers. He's not lucid at all. There's no accountability for anything he's going to say or do in response to this.
He hasn't had a coffee.
Yeah.
He hasn't had a bagel. He's just woken up. Rude, rude, rude.
I think I totally agree with that. The last thing that I want to bring up just as a conversation point that I'm frankly confused by this movie. And I'm like, are there deleted scenes? Did I miss something?
There's no deleted scenes in this movie. I'll tell you that right now.
Is that the final fight scene when Batman is fighting the Riddler henchman on the rooftop, and then Selina saves him, and there's one last henchman.
Oh, yeah.
And Batman can't get up. So he shoots himself full of green rage juice?
I thought it was adrenaline.
It was green.
It was green. You're right. I'm not saying it's not green, but I assumed adrenaline.
Uh-huh.
But it was green, like kryptonite green, in a world that doesn't have Superman.
I thought it was like Bane venom.
Shit. I didn't think that.
And he had like a special injection pouch and shit like that.
It did take him a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a process to inject himself with it. Yeah, it was definitely, but then again, nothing he has is explained. Like, he literally never once explains a gadget, except maybe the contacts.
True. But some gadgets don't need explanation. A fancy car is a fancy car.
A flight suit's a flight suit.
A grappling hook it is a rope with a sharp metal object at the end and it helps you climb. But this was just like, I've seen fancy cars. I've seen ropes with metal things at the end. I've never in my life seen someone shoot themselves with green juice and get stronger. Other than Bane's venom, and that's it. So that was one where I'm like, what the fuck is this? I really thought it was Bane venom.
Oh, no, that didn't confuse me because I accepted that as adrenaline. I will say I was super confused literally 10 seconds later when... Was the thing supposed to fall and it was going to like electrify the water?
They did not explain that.
I don't know what was happening here. He did this crazy dramatic jump like he was like committing suicide. Like I thought he was jumping to his death. Like he was like, I'm going to kill myself so this electricity thing won't fall in the water and kill everyone. But it was really just his water delivery system of himself.
And I think it also prevented the electricity thing from falling in the water.
I guess, because that cuts the electricity from getting to it. Because he cut it when he fell.
I thought there was a big electrical box that had a thing hanging off of it, and that heavy thing was going to pull the electrical box down, thus electrifying the water and killing everyone in it. So he jumped and he cut the heavy thing. And then it prevented the heavy thing from pulling a big electrical box down and into the water.
Oh, I thought the heavy thing was the electrical box, and if you cut it, there's no electricity in it.
Yours could also make sense.
Yours makes total sense, too. Either way, electricity.
Poorly filmed and shot, I think.
Is what we're saying.
So
2 minutes of just confusing stuff happening.
And he falls, a good distance, but not the biggest distance into water. It's enough where I'm like, oh, that's a little inconvenient. But it is filmed like it is falling to your death.
Yeah, especially because he'd just taken like a big hit to the chest with a shotgun and he like seemed like he was dying. So I'm like, oh, the adrenaline's going to wear off and he's going to kill himself in this water, I guess?
Just falls into water and then helps people. Because this is not a Batman who hides from the public in any way.
Which is great because I'm like, why do you even care if people know you're Bruce Wayne? Your Bruce Wayne identity does nothing.
I guess that's true.
You've got no one to protect. I mean, it ruins the secret of like, am I darkness? Am I vengeance? Am I the shadow?
It removes the mystique, for sure.
It removes the mystique. So that's the only reason to really hide his identity in this one. But yeah, that's the last 2 minutes. Confusing.
Yeah, it's like they were trying to wrap it up and edit time, and they cut all of it off of that final scene, which is a very, very strange choice. And I'm like, oh, weird green ooze all of a sudden.
Just got some ooze ready to go.
And some weird electrical boxes that we can't quite understand.
Yeah, no, didn't need any of that.
Well, other than that, I like it.
Other than that, I still feel the exact same, that I will not watch this ever again. I'm the Batman for you. I'm happy for you.
I think I will watch this 1 to 2 more times in my life because
like
it is still long and I admire it, but it doesn't necessarily like warm me on a cold day or unlock like a high level of artistic joy. It's just say like, wow, you are very good. It unlocks respect.
I like your realistic expectation of how many times you'll watch this movie. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
you're as down to earth as this film.
If I went over to someone's house and I was like, oh, what are you watching? And they were like, oh, The Batman. I'd be like, oh yeah, I can fuck with this. Like, that's a good day. That's a fine day.
And then I get to be like, well, Andrew's going to be gone for 3 hours. I got the place to myself.
So let's go in for the close. Let's ask the final question of what would you change? So now that we discussed everything we discussed, what would you change about this movie if you could change anything? But before we do ask the final question, we will remind you, as we do every week, take a minute, subscribe, rate, review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Podcast Addict. It helps us move up the charts. It helps us find new listeners. It means a lot to us. It means a lot to all the podcasts you listen to if you rate, review, and subscribe them. So take like 3 minutes out of your day and do it for some of your faves.
Yeah, it means a lot. We read them. It makes us happy. We would love to have some more 5-star reviews on any of the apps that Andrew just listed. Wherever you're listening to this, see if you can rate and review.
Do it right there. And as well, if you want to support the show monetarily, you can do that over on Patreon. You can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/fromsuperheroes. And we do a monthly exclusive episode of the podcast that is just for our patrons. So if you head over to our Patreon right now, it'll be up this week, I believe, is the Twilight episode.
I think next week.
Next week, Twilight will be the exclusive episode for this month. More Robert Pattinson. We've never seen it. Let's see.
I've barely seen Robert Pattinson and stuff. I think Tenet was my first Robert Pattinson experience, so this will be my third.
There we go.
So much to discuss.
The rare Pattinson appearance on the podcast. You can find that next week. It'll be available to hero level patrons on our Patreon, patreon.com/FromSuperheroes. And you can cancel, change your level on any given month, so there's no obligations. If you got the money this month, sign on up. You get access to the full back catalog. If your budget changes next month, feel free to knock it down, cancel, change, do whatever you got to do. Take care of yourself first. Support us if you can, and get cool bonuses, certainly. So patreon.com/FromSuperheroes. That's patreon.com/FromSuperheroes. And now, the final question of what would you change? Diana, what would you change?
My biggest change is it'd be shorter, but that's just obviously. But I think my biggest change is I could not believe the very end of this, where the lesson that Bruce took from everything that had happened was that Batman can't just be fear. Batman also needs to be like hope and leadership. And that's not a terrible lesson. But the fact that in no way did he learn the lesson that I can do more with my money as Bruce Wayne than I can as Batman baffled the hell out of me. Because he learns throughout the movie at every step of the way that his rich white privilege is so much can do more than Batman can. Batman shows up at the Iceberg Lounge and isn't allowed in, has to fight his way in. Bruce Wayne shows up at the Iceberg Lounge, welcomed inside. And like his renewal program has no oversight. He's just let it rot. So it's not helping anyone that it's supposed to help. The fact that his lesson at the end of this was not, I have to embrace Bruce Wayne and also have philanthropic help of Gotham. And he's still just like, me as a single man fighting looters is what's going to help the city. I'm blown away. So my change is he's like, I'm taking over the renewal program. I'm back involved with everything involving Wayne Corp. I will be Bruce and Batman.
Wow.
Is the change this movie needed.
That's brilliant.
And I really thought that's where they were going. So I feel like I'm going with the natural flow of where this movie was headed.
That's absolutely brilliant. I couldn't agree more with everything that you're saying. I think that is a wonderful way to end this movie on like him walking into Wayne Tech, him taking something over. Because the movie is not necessarily about philanthropy being bad. It is about the abandonment of his parents' legacy is what has created this toxic fund of non-taxable
free money that the mob is just siphoning off.
Yeah, that corrupts everyone it's ever touched.
He's still got all the files and everything. So if he just was like, I am personally overseeing the renewal program from now on, and it is only going to individuals, and I'm having it run by people I trust.
And I'm reopening the orphanage.
And it's going to have heat, and it won't be full of rats.
It won't have rats that eat you.
It won't have rats that eat you. It'll have heat. Yeah, the fact that his lesson was not, I can do more with my money than I can as a single man, or you can do both at the very least, blew me away. So he learns that money helps people. Money is what people that are poor need.
Yeah, because at every turn, every single character in this movie is telling him like, yeah, people with money do not care about us at all in any way. And I think the joke of that is supposed to be him being like, I do. I care about you with my punches. But no, you
Can you feel how much I care?
Punch, punch. Reinforcing it. Yeah, it is the least philanthropic that any version of Batman I've ever seen is.
Absolutely. He will not do a thing. He refuses. Alfred begs him to go to a meeting about his finances. He's like, no, I don't care. I can punch 8 dudes tonight.
Yeah.
But if you gave money to a charity, you could feed 100 families. That's my change. Andrew, what would you change?
I'm floored by how good that is. I absolutely adore it. I also, to piggyback off something you said earlier, I think all of the Bruce Wayne storyline can just, maybe up until that point can mostly go, because a lot of it doesn't work. The relationship with Alfred, they only have 2 scenes and it's strained. Alfred can go. Grace can go too.
Was her name Grace?
Whatever her name was.
Ruby or something?
Why is she there?
Rand? Like, you don't know he's Batman. Get out of here.
The fact that he calls his mansion and she picks up and he says, put Alfred on the phone, he needs to get out.
But not her.
Not her.
She can die.
He literally is fine if she dies. So he knows that an attack is about to happen on this home. And he's like, Grace, what the fuck are you doing answering the phone? Put Alfred on. He does not give one shit about this woman.
Because the bomb wasn't sent to like the Bat Cave below Wayne Tower.
No,
it was sent to his house.
His home, yeah.
Oh my God, yeah, Grace should be dead.
Yeah, so whoever she is has to go. This weird relationship with Alfred has to go. I also think the other big thing that has to go is the like who murdered his parents mystery, because that comes and goes in like 10 minutes of screen time where literally it's like the meeting with Falcone, and Falcone is like, it's the Marconi family. I think Marconi?
Yeah, Marconi. Marconi killed your dad.
And it's like, oh, and then he's like, oh, okay, thanks. And then he leaves, and Alfred's like, I think it was actually the Falcones that killed your dad, but no one will really know. And Bruce is just like, oh, okay, fuck. And that's the end of that. So it goes nowhere. It does nothing but eat up screen time. And in the middle of the movie where it's like, we don't need a new mystery.
It's not connected to the Riddler.
It kills the rhythm and the strength of the Riddler thing, because Riddler's not even trying to like pit him against these crime families to be like, maybe I know that Batman is Bruce Wayne and Bruce Wayne thinks these crime families killed his parents. He'll go nuts. It's just a random side quest that doesn't do anything. So most importantly, who killed his parents? Who fucking cares? His parents were trash, and that's a problem that he needs to reckon with, but who cares who killed them?
Yeah, the movie doesn't deal with it well. It does stop the momentum completely. It's hilarious to have two scenes in a row where it's like, the Marconis, actually it was Falcone. It's like, well, then I don't care who did it. And also, one of the tenements of Batman is that he can never know who killed his parents, and that's why he keeps doing this. It's like knowing the Joker's identity.
Yeah.
It's one of the things you cannot change, so don't put it in your movie.
And then that third scene ending with Alfred, like 3 scenes in a row about it, and then it ending with Alfred going, or it could have been a random mugger, who knows? And it's just the movie and like flat out admitting like, who cares? We don't know what we were doing.
We don't know why we had 20 minutes of movie devoted to this. No.
And maybe it shows that the movie gets that it doesn't matter, but if it doesn't matter, then don't do it.
I totally agree. Cut all that.
Yeah.
Didn't need any of it.
So cut that. Cut the parents thing, but I love, or cut the who murdered the parents thing, but reckoning with the legacy. I love that for your ending.
Thank you. I also like my ending. But yes, definitely. Yeah, shorter and with a new ending. Excellent. We did it.
Bing, bang, boom.
Boom, bam, boom.
Well, we will talk about more Batman Origins next week on the podcast, where we are going to talk about Batman Begins.
He's beginning, y'all.
He's beginning. So we're going to the first one.
Of that trilogy.
Of that particular series of films. So we've never covered it on the podcast. We're covering it next week. Batman Begins, and as well next week on the podcast. If you want more Robert Pattinson, our Patreon exclusive next week will be Twilight over at patreon.com/FromSuperheroes. If you sign up, you can get access to our exclusive ones, and you get access immediately to the whole back catalog as well. And in the meantime, if you want to get a hold of us, you can reach me on Twitter at Ivimey, Ivimey.
You can reach me at Words of Diana.
And you can reach both of us at From Superheroes, and we'll talk to y'all next week.
Bye.